Good afternoon. Today is March 22nd, 2022, and this is the hearings for the Ways and Means Committee. First, we will be hearing Senate Bill 201, and presenting on behalf of the State Department of Assessment and Taxation is the Director, Michael Higgs. Thank you for being here. And we also have Committee Dan Phillips here from SDAT if anyone has any questions. So Mr. Higgs, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It is my pleasure to be here. My name is Michael Higgs, for the record, and I'm the Director of the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. SB 201 is the Property Appraisal Aids and Record Retention, also known as Microfilm to Digital Act of 2022. We named it that because the department still uses microfilm to keep our records. Yes, microfilm. This stuff is deteriorating quickly. We have records dating back to the 1800s, and the microfilm is not the best way to keep this. What we need to do is transition the storage to electronic records, and it's going to take a little bill here to do that. So if we can get your approval, we would love the ability to modernize the way we keep and maintain our records in our real property offices in the 24 counties in the state.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Higgs or Mr. Phillips from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you both for being here. You've traveled so far.
Thanks for having us.
That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 201. Next, we have with us, we're calling Senate Bill 15 and Senator Jackson. Welcome to Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, Senator Michael Jackson on behalf of Senate Bill 15. This bill is cross-filed by Delegate Jones, House Bill 340, which your committee has heard earlier this session. Senate Bill 15 is a straightforward piece of legislation that does a few significant things. It changes from 3 years to 4 years, the amount of time to institute the prosecution or the imposition of a civil fine relating to election law, an election law offense. It fixes a provision of the election law article to provide a more meaningful prosecution of election law violations. While the State Board of Elections is able to handle minor administrative election law violations, they require the assistance of the Office of the State Prosecutor for cases involving significant amounts of complexity. The State Board of Election makes every attempt to protect those who unknowingly commit violations and allows those to bring campaign finance accounts into compliance. These efforts to bring accounts into compliance, however, often last well over a year, putting the office of the state prosecutor at a severe disadvantage in investigating egregious violators and violations and in bringing forward potential charges. If enacted, the added amount of time that this legislation would provide would allow prosecutors to better complete investigations. This would help them to better do their job, holding those accountable who intentionally and maliciously seek to undermine the integrity of the campaign finance laws and related electoral system. The second piece of the bill gives the offices of the state prosecutor civil enforcement authority over violations of Title 14 Title 14 law violations. Title 14 is a portion of the code that requires business entities who have single contracts of at least $200,000 with the state to report campaign contributions. Presently, the Office of the State Prosecutor doesn't have this important authority to ensure transparency and to avoid corruption. Madam Chair, I'd ask for the committee to return a favorable report on this piece of legislation. The bill passed 45-0 in the full Senate and was voted out favorable in EHE, Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. I see that Mr. Jared Demarinis from the Campaign Finance Office is also on the link. I do know this is sponsor only. And so with that, I would ask for a favorable report and I would stand for questions along with Mr. Demarinis.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Senator Jackson.
Thank you all very much. Take care.
Next, House Bill, sorry, Senate Bill 163. Senator Kagan, welcome. How are you?
Hey, it's great to be with you all. Congratulations, Madam Chair. I'm
Thank
thrilled
you.
to be in front of you all. I have to give a special shout out to District 17 Delegate Polakovich Carr, but great to be with all of you. For the record, Senator Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville, and the Vice Chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs. Today is a bill that is related to curing precinct reporting. It's an emergency bill, and frankly, it's even more urgent since the election date was pushed back 3 weeks. Briefly, curing, and I'm sure everyone in the committee knows, but in case someone's watching at home, is what happens when someone completes their ballot, sends it into the mail, and forgot to sign the oath on the envelope. That ballot will not be counted without the oath signed, and so it needs to be cured. And this bill sets up the parameters for doing that. It requires that our local boards of elections contact that voter. And ultimately, it will be by text, by email, by letter, by telephone, by knocking on their door, and offering them the opportunity to cure their ballot envelope so it can be counted. Let me be clear, the envelope is not yet opened. This isn't fixing that they voted wrong or anything. This is about making sure that the ballot can be opened and counted. It would allow that to happen not longer, as soon as practicable, and not longer than 3 days after the error was discovered. The other key thing, another key thing is starting to allow the pre-processing of the ballots, especially with the delay, especially with the large, the rapid increase in people voting by mail. In Maryland, about 61% of voters chose to vote by mail. And so our 24 local boards are going to have endless piles and boxes of ballots. And if they wait, as Maryland law currently requires, until election day to start counting them, we won't know who won for quite an extended period of time. This bill will allow them to start processing, canvassing, and scanning, but currently not tabulating, starting 8 days before early voting. Now, Mayo, the Maryland Association of Election Officials, was really clear, A, that they wanted 8 days, and I think you've got written testimony from them, and B, they wanted to be only until early voting, especially during July when they're going to be short-staffed. People have long-planned vacations. It might be harder to hire consultants and stuff, and short-termers. They need to do one thing at a time. So they'll be focused on it before early voting. Then they're going to pivot all of their staff resources and focus on early voting to make sure that goes clearly, it goes smoothly. Another important part of this bill is that it's going to require precinct voting. All of the 5 vote by mail states, Utah, and then Oregon, hold on, here we go, 7, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, and Washington, all of those have been using precinct level reporting, and yet Maryland chose not to do that as our numbers were skyrocketing. We want to make sure that candidates, political parties, advocacy organizations, and others have access to election results by precinct. It also is a really effective indicator of possible fraud or errors. And so we want to make sure that that is required, and this bill does require that. 37 states, according to NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislators, allow for pre-processing. Maryland is really behind in that. So those are the quick overview. I am delighted to take questions from anyone. I want to mention that there is one amendment that State Board of Elections has requested, and I see Jared Demarinis is here, and he can also ask questions, or answer questions. But the opportunity to set up a portal for people to cure their ballot online is not quite ready for prime time, and they don't think it's going to be ready for primary or general this year. So they asked for a delay of just that portion of the bill until next June. So, and I support that amendment. But it is the direction we want to be going, is to allow voters lots of ways of curing their ballots. And with that, I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a couple questions, and I see Catherine Berry is here too, committee, to answer questions. So first, Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator. It's good to see you again.
You too.
Quick question. So, and you alluded to it in your testimony. You had talked about how with right now the primary being pushed back to July, there's going to be a lot of people on vacation, out of town, and accessible. Does this bill allow people to cure their ballot over the phone or by text, or do you still have to sign it and then creating the additional struggle of trying to get face-to-face with folks during the month of July?
Great question, Delegate Griffith. Thank you. So I'll start and then I'll toss it to Mr. Demarinis. Some of this is going to be new technology, but we want voters to be able to be responsive, and we want to open the door to accurate and timely legal curing. And so if they're on vacation, can they click on a link, demonstrate it's them, and make sure that they can validate that they are who they are and provide that information, but then make sure that their vote counts. There are a lot of different ways of doing it, but we want to make sure that it's secure. Jared, do you want to add more? And that's some of that is not going to be ready for this year. It'll be ready for next June, but there will still be more options this year than there were 2 years ago. Jared?
Yes, sure. Well, first, thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill over here as well. I know that Mayo is very happy with this. Yes, so basically, this election, the voter would be able to cure by email, mailed form, or an in-person visit to the local board of office. The texting message and the accessible online portal will not be ready for this, I would say, for this election. But it will be delayed until the 24 election. So they do have other methods to help cure it besides just coming in person.
And so obviously email, in person, and by mail to cure, understood. But for the future, what would be the ways that an individual could verify their identity through online portal and text and so on and so forth? What would that, do we have a sense, since we're passing that for future reference, what's that going to look like?
Jared, do you want to continue?
Oh, I mean, I guess the online portal would be something that we would have, a secure link with the state board website that would be able to have them upload the document into it. Texting services would be something where that individual will be able to text back a photo of their signature and their cured ballot there from a number that we would have on record, so that we can identify the individual to make sure that it's from the correct source. Now, you have to remember the texting part here too, is that, they would have had to tell us the text message, their number. We don't actually have that. So that number was associated with that voter to begin with and received other notifications via that way as well. So.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Delegate Wilkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much, Senator, for bringing this bill. I especially appreciate the portions on pre-ballot processing for everyone. The Senator and I spent some time last year in Colorado actually witnessing in person their pre-ballot processing structure, and I thought that was very informative. So it's helpful to see how that sort of come to fruition in your legislation, Senator. So thank you for that. My question is for Mr. Demarinis. I wanted to understand better. I think this issue of precinct level data is something that's really important, not just for us as elected officials to really be able to look at that turnout, but also to you all as a board for us to really see the trends, see if there are problems with, maybe turnout going down in a certain precinct, that's being able to react and understand what's going on to ensure full access. Can you share more around the challenges or the barriers or why we weren't able to get that precinct level data, and also wanting to confirm that we're going to have that for the upcoming election? So if you can just talk about that precinct level data issue to remind us what the issue was, and I want to know about this upcoming election.
Sure. So prior to the 2020 election, precinct level data was not on what was considered absentee, but mail-in voting at the time. And when we went into the 2020 election, it was still not considered a part of precinct level data. We had the entire primary in 2020 via mail-in. And so afterwards, we adjusted accordingly and made it so that in the general, precinct level data was available for mail-in voting. And this basically will now codify that and include early voting and provisional voting as well in the precinct level data. So basically, the precinct level data now will encompass all facets of voting, whether you vote early, mail-in, or provisionally, so that you would have that. One of the I would say burdens was that the local boards then would have had to keep producing sufficient copies of this data and tabulated by the precincts. So now we've eliminated that and made it so that it's only at the State Board of Elections that has that information. We're the ones that we collected all anyway from all the precincts. So it just is now easier for candidates and for political parties to get it from one depository rather than 24. And so that would be less of a burden on them. And so that's kind of, it's basically codifying a practice that we started in 2020 for the 2020 general and now moving it forward.
Got it. Thank you.
Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Senator, for this bill. I've got a couple of questions. I guess the first one is about the pre-processing, and it looks to me like the original bill said that the absentee ballots could be processed but not tabulated before Election Day.
Right.
And now they can be tabulated, but the results can't be released. And I'm just curious, sort of the conversation and decision around that.
Delegate Feldmark, thank you so much for that question. Before I answer that, I just want to to acknowledge Delegate Wilkins' comment that we did learn a lot in Denver, and the pre-processing and all that was really helpful. So back to you, Delegate Feldmark. Tabulation is a controversial issue. I felt strongly that they should cure any ballots that were not with oaths that were not signed. Then they should open them. They should flatten them out. They should put them through the scanner, organize them, batch them, and everything, but not tabulate. Now, to be clear, they can't release them, and there are serious penalties for anyone who's even whispering to a friend, Delegate so-and-so is in deep trouble unless she does more get up vote or something. We got information initially that said that some of the jurisdictions would not be able to scan but not tabulate. Since then, and so the Senate bill passed with a may tabulate because we didn't want to mess up any of our jurisdictions. I got information from ES&S, the vendor, directly that not tabulating should work and should be fine. So after I'm done speaking, I'm going to toss it to either Jared or to Katie Berry of Mayo, the Maryland Association of Election Officials. It's a really important question. I think either way can work fine. The bottom line is it should not be released. No preliminary numbers should be released. So if our counties can do the technology and scan them and not tabulate, that was my original bill and that was my preference. That is not the posture in which it came out of the Senate because of information that we had. If I can just add one more thing, and Delegate Feldmark, you and Delegate Wilkins have been such great leaders on election laws, and I know that Delegate Moon also has, Vice Chair Moon, also has a similar bill. The governor's executive order in 2020 allowed for 33 days to process and to start a curing process and all that. 33 days was a long time. Mayo, the Maryland Association of Election Officials, our 24 local boards, last year said 18 days would be sufficient. And so that's what I had legislation allowing for 18 days. This year, Mayo said, nope, we can do with 8. but we need 8, especially during the summertime. We're going to need 8 days. And so I just want to make sure the committee sees that we have abbreviated that time, but they feel like this is the bottom line. This is the floor, especially in July. So Katie Berry or Jared, I don't know if you want to speak more about ES&S and tabulation.
Katie, I'll let you go first if you want.
Thank you, Senator Kagan and Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Catherine Berry on behalf of the Maryland Association of Election Officials. So as you had seen in my written testimony this week and a couple of weeks ago, the local boards of elections were following all of the procedures that were laid out by the State Board of Elections. We have proven that those are successful processes. And we were asking to be able to do the processes the same way we did in 2020. So we would rely on the State Board of Elections for any guidance or anything that would have to be changed in our processes. But I would like to reiterate what Senator Kagan said. You know, the election directors are mainly the ones that are managing that tabulating part, taking the sticks or the tapes and the results away. It is not temporary employees or election judges or anything like that. We have signed an oath to maintain security and privacy and all of those things. So, you know, I just really would like to stress, like, we take our jobs very seriously, and to be able to finish this entire part of the process really helps our outcomes to making sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible, taking into account, you know, amounts of equipment that we have and that type of thing. So, Jared, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
I just wanted to mention that there is a short turnaround time on the county level for November. So you have a November election, and everyone, the county offices all get sworn in, I think the first, either December 1st or the first Monday in December. So, you know, if you look at what Ms. Berry had given you, if you look at the numbers right now, we have more applications being returned to us for mail-in votes than all of 18. So if 18 numbers were at 5 to 6%, and we started after the fact, and then it was 10 days later for the certification process, right now we're already at those levels and exceeding those. So the new normal for mail-in voting will be significantly higher. That will put an undue strain on the amount of resources to do it in such a short time frame after the election to get it within that 10-day window, which, by the way, even some counties were unable to meet that requirement sometimes, and had to push out their certification past that date. This would then have a significant impact, not on the release of the results early, but also the fact that, you know, the swearing in on the December 1st and butting up against that, you know, so if there was ever a tight race, so this will give some flexibility in at least processing a significant portion of the mail-in ballots.
And just the last thing I want to add is that in Montgomery County, and I know we are the largest and we tend to vote, 348,293 ballots were returned early and by mail, and processing that takes a lot of time. And remember that we also have to do ballot duplications for anyone who votes by printing out a ballot, because there was an internet delivered ballot, which is more and more people are going to be doing this time because it was given as an option.
Right. Thank you. So then my second question has to do with making sure that we can cure as soon as envelopes are received. Right. And I asked about this you know, a couple weeks ago when we were hearing the House bill, or the similar House bill, and the conversation got into accepting or rejecting the ballots. But I'm concerned, having looked at this language again, on page 3, line 16, where we say that a local board may not accept, reject, open, or process any envelope of an absentee ballot before, and then that's the 8 days before early voting.
Right.
I'm concerned that that limits when you can start the curing process. Because if you're noticing a problem on an envelope, or can you point me to where it clarifies that the curing process can in fact start before this 8-day window?
So Delegate, the one thing out of this whole election process this year that doesn't worry me is the length of time to cure. Because again, they're going to be notifying the voters right away. They're going to be using multiple methods potentially. And remember that voters have until 10 days after Election Day to cure their ballot. So they have a lot of time. And I suspect that we will be able to cure virtually everyone. I'm pretty optimistic because of the confidence that I have in our local boards of elections. Last time, 1,511 Maryland votes were rejected because they couldn't be cured in time. So we're giving more options, and there's going to be more time because we can our local boards of elections can pre-process 8 days in advance. So that's adding 8 more days. And again, then through the early voting period, they could even come in and decide to provisionally vote on Election Day or during early voting, and that's an option for them if they don't have the ability or desire to cure their old ballot.
Right.
And the old ballot would then be discarded, and then again until 10 days after Election Day at 10 a.m.
Okay, I guess maybe if Ms. Berry or Mr. Demarinis can clarify, are we sure that 8-day time limit doesn't apply to the initial screening of a ballot to determine if curing is required?
Thank you, Delegate Feldmark, for your question.
Sure.
So the process of accepting or rejecting a ballot is physically what the board would do during a canvass, like after the canvassing teams open up the ballot and that type of thing. The curing process.
This is not accepting or rejecting a ballot. This is accepting or rejecting the envelope. That's where the conversation got strayed last time. So I want to make sure we focus on what the bill says.
Thank you. Okay,
Sure.
So the accepting or rejecting of an envelope would happen in the canvass with the board members. With curing, we are not accepting or rejecting an envelope at that point. We are just focused on looking at that signature, making sure that there is one, and if there is not, then we have the time to reach out to those voters to get that done. But that's not part of an accepting or rejecting process.
So
Okay,
Ms. Berry,
thank you.
I think Delegate Feldmark is basically asking if I sent my ballot back a month before Election Day and you wouldn't start, and I forgot to sign the oath, you wouldn't notify me until after you started canvassing and processing the ballots 8 days before if this bill were to pass as is, correct? Even though you've had it for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking at Jared here. Yeah, I mean,
let me just say this, based upon the language here, the review of the ballot envelope, and that's on line 12 and 13 of page 3. Says after the commencement of the canvass, which is basically, that's when a local board shall review the ballot envelope for the omission. And then we have 3 business days or as soon as practicable to notify the voter. So I guess at that point there, it's more of a security issue there as it comes in. We check it in, we secure it, but then when we start really reviewing all the ballots, it's starting at the canvas of it at that time. So that's something, that's how I look at this right now, that it's line 16 and 17 talk about the acceptance, the rejection, and the processing, which is basically the canvas there. But the review part, which is, Delegate, your question, that's on lines 13 and 14. There.
Okay, and that is after the commencement of the canvass, so it wouldn't be until 8 days before.
8 days before early voting.
Early voting, right.
Right, so,
Okay.
I guess, this is pushing it out 8 days before early voting, coupled with 10 days after it. And we have to start notifying those voters as quickly as possible, but no
Right.
later than 3 business days.
I guess I'm just wondering if a ballot is received 3 weeks earlier than that, should we and the oath isn't signed, what's the benefit in waiting 3 days before the voter can be notified that they need to cure their ballot?
I think at one point, a part of the canvas, it's under public scrutiny with the canvas. You have bipartisan teams, and you also have outside observers on that part there. So, so as these envelopes come in that need to be cured, everyone understands that it's being, done in a nonpartisan manner and in under, I would say, scrutiny of public eyes.
I might add one more thing, if I could, Delegate Feldmar. One of the reasons for this bill is to make sure that curing is done exactly the same way in all 24 jurisdictions. We don't want, a county that's got extra staff to be able to knock on someone's door to cure, and someone else who's understaffed or something to try to, make a phone call 2 weeks later or something. We want all voters to have access to the right to cure, and this will set up some standardization.
Thank you.
Delegate Wilkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really appreciated those questions from Delegate Feldmar. I think that's really important for us to clarify. And I think we probably need to unpack it a little bit more so we can do that offline. So I'm not sure I fully think that it has to be 100% standardized in that way. So maybe we can just unpack a bit more. But on another topic, I just wanted to close the loop to make sure I didn't miss it. I don't think I heard the yes or no. And I might have missed it. In terms of tabulation and our potential challenges with our system on if we have to tabulate or don't have to tabulate, do we have to tabulate or not? Because I know that's going to be a major piece that we'll have to figure out in moving forward. So I just wanted to make sure I heard the response on that piece.
I can speak for the Senate, and the Senate stands by its product, and now it's the product. Now it's in the possession of the House.
Sorry, to clarify my question, what I mean is, this is probably for the board, in terms of our technology and the ability to scan without tabulating, do we have the ability to do that or not?
Jared?
Sorry, I'm muted there. The answer, yes, there is technology right now that would do it. We were just doing the processes that we instituted in 2020, which was a very successful election. And so at that point, it was what Mayo wanted was the idea that, why change something that was successfully implemented for a past election and to keep the same processes here. But there is the ability to do that technologically.
And we tabulated in 2020 without providing the results prematurely.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Senator Kagan.
Great to see you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, good luck. Take care.
Thank you. That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 163, and that concludes the hearings for the Ways and Means Committee today. Colleagues, we will resume Senate bill hearings tomorrow at 1 p.m. See you then. Thank you.